Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled.
From the studio gym where excuses never apply.
It's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today, this is a Facebook Live show, so if you have questions, you can post them on Facebook, and we will work them into the show today and answer them for you. Before we get started, as you can see, Coach Rob Regish is on standby. I just want to mention that we still have an amazing sale on Thrive Protein. Thrive Protein is the single best protein powder in the world. I say that with all candor and without tongue-in-cheek. It's not puffery. There is not another protein powder blend in the world that has the important ingredients that Thrive has, and that's because I didn't formulate it. Mother Nature did. I just looked at human breast milk and said, oh, these are the things that are made for humans, and we're going to put it in Thrive. And right now you can get a pound for $14.99. It's a stupid price. Literally, I am making under $3. It's not BS. And I want people to try it because I know that once people try it, they will keep buying it. The coupon code is THRIV 2019, Thrive 2019. If you go to thrivprotein.com, you can take advantage of that. And now, without further delay, his music. How you doing, Rob?
I am doing fantastic. I'm actually in the midst of a week off from the weights, but I do go to the gym and I enjoy the cardio and the fellowship of my fellow lifters.
I think I'm going to the doctor's tomorrow, Wednesday, and I think I'm going to be given a green light to do two things. To start doing recumbent bike cardio with my boot on,
Right.
and also be cleared to travel because I'm going to go visit Aaron Singerman in Boca Raton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It's a trip that really should have occurred a long time ago, and so finally, there was always something standing in my way
Right.
to get it done. So I'm really excited about that.
Now,
But yeah, I'm going to start doing cardio very shortly. I need cardio desperately. It's the missing component. It's been missing literally for over a year now.
Right. Now, how about the weights? Do you know when you'll be cleared back for that?
I'm training upper body. I'm not doing anything with lower body. I'm going to ask him if I can start doing lower body type stuff like extensions and leg curls and those types of things.
Right.
But he's letting me train right now my upper body, and my upper body's responding very well. I'm pretty much getting back to where my strength was before I started taking off just for the surgery.
Okay. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, listen, I'm glad you're on the mend. I know what it feels like, and hopefully soon enough, you'll be back hanging and banging, right?
Well, how's your back?
That's a great question. Thank you. My back is much better. I was able to rehab it within a week. Now, that involved 2 to 3 chiropractic adjustments, but also wall walks every day. And that's part of the reason why I just love that movement. It is restorative in nature, so it doesn't take away. I have every confidence that I rehab my back in half the time. And the best part is I got back in the gym and I picked up right where I left off on my program, squat program.
Yeah. There's a study that was just published, and Khalid Hamloui posted it today about exercise reversing the aging effect on muscle.
Right.
And I can tell you it's true because my upper body is great and my lower body feels old. It feels old and creaky and stiff and sore. So I know that this stuff is true. I really do. And there's nothing better than training. There's nothing better than training. I don't care. The injuries aside, that's because I tend to push myself as hard as I can. Right. Injuries aside, there's nothing better than training, and people need to train for their entire lives.
I would, yeah, absolutely. I would concur. And in fact, it helps to have a short list of things that you can do when you're injured, if nothing else, to get back in the gym for, you know, the endorphin hit.
Right.
It's a huge part of healing yourself.
Yeah. We have, looks like Dr. George Touliatos is listening live from Greece right now. If you are, say hello, George. And then we have Johnny Neptune. I don't know if that's really his name, but that's definitely his Facebook name that he uses. An avid fan of the show is listening live also.
Yeah.
So we're going to get right on to some questions here. This one came from Robert David. He said, recently I had a debate with someone on Facebook about training the chest. I was speaking about the inner chest specialization, outer chest specialization, etc. He argued that biomechanics basically says that there is no such thing, I guess, as specialization for inner and outer. The muscle contracts and therefore you can't target specific areas of the chest. However, in my own experience, you can target certain areas of the chest. Is there a theory that supports my position that specialization in certain areas does in fact work?
You know, it's an interesting question. From a strictly scientific standpoint, with respect to studies, your friend's opinion is probably a lot more tenable than yours. However, things are always not so cut and dry in the world of bodybuilding. So for a long time, I was of the opinion that a muscle can get bigger, a muscle can get smaller, but there was no such thing as shaping, let's say, a muscle via training. If there was, I reasoned, then go ahead and do whatever workout you need to do and shape your biceps into a triangle. You know, I mean, if you can't do that, then the whole rationale you can train for shape, I think, does not follow. However, I have had experiences that lend themselves well to the fact that that isn't the entire story. So bodybuilding is part science and it's part art. And the experience that I had, it made me understand that it's just science can't explain it, was this. For 10 weeks, I followed static contraction training to the letter. Every exercise, every range of motion, every, you know, hold, every set, because there were no reps. It was by and large 1 to 2 maximal holds for 5 seconds on exercises like the leg press, the top range of the bench press, the top range of the deadlift, and on and on. And so for these 10 weeks, the weights I was hoisting were increasing exponentially. I actually ran out of weight because I had a free weight gym in my cellar, and I ran out of weight. I had to go buy more because my poundages were jumping. So, you know, it follows, at least that's what static contraction was trying to say. It follows that the muscle's growth would also be exponential, off the charts. The reality is this, my joints started killing me, my tendons and ligaments too, but the worst part was my muscles, instead of getting bigger, seemed to be just more flat. And so I learned a hard lesson there about static holds are not the end all be all and only thing that stimulates optimal muscle growth. And I think that's what we're talking about. For optimal muscle growth, the muscle needs to be stretched under load. There needs to be a contraction. And if you look at the science around actin and myosin, it's almost like a zipper. Without those two components, you know, you can't zip and therefore, you know, cause muscle growth. So I would tell you that both you and your friend have something there. The part that you're feeling is kind of difficult to describe is the art of building muscle, and all of those components of muscle growth, I'm convinced, have not been discovered yet, other than by perhaps people in the gym. So I don't know, Carl, if you've had a similar.
Yeah, I specifically to his question about the inner training the chest,
Yep.
so that you hit different areas. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. You're absolutely right about this, and your friend is wrong. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because for the longest time, I had a hard time hitting the center of my chest and getting it to grow. The sides of my chest grew fine. My pec thickness was fine. But where I was lacking was this little valley right here, which now I can feel with great depth, because I started to do something specifically. I started to do pec deck work one hand at a time, because one of the things you can't do when you do pec deck work with two hands is cross over, okay? Right. In order to activate the centermost portion of the pectoral muscle, you have to go beyond middle. In fact, if you're watching the show right now and you take your hand and put it in that bony area between the two pectoral muscles, and you slowly bring your hand in, you'll see it's not even activated yet until you get about here. And when you get about here, that is when the center, because the muscle is pulling from the outside, so naturally the last to be activated is the innermost portion. When I started doing pec deck work one hand at a time and focusing on that crossover, that is when my center of my chest started to grow. So you're absolutely right. You know, I see guys doing partials. They're not activating the entire muscle. I see guys who squat doing partials with squats. Their upper legs are great, but when you get down to where the teardrop is, it just goes away. It disappears if you're not getting deep into that squat. So the argument can be made that without actually doing certain things and studying kinesiology, you will end up with a muscle that is not completely developed from side to side and top to bottom. Absolutely. Right. Another reason why you got guys who they want thickness in the upper chest. What do? They do inclines. They do incline pressing, right? They want thickness in the bottom of the chest. You do dips or you do decline work. No, you're absolutely right. Your friend is wrong, and it's not even worth getting into an argument. Just work your chest the way you know, where you can feel it hitting all the different areas, and let your chest do the talking. And when he looks at you and goes, man, your pecs are so proud, you're so full, say, well, that's because I understand how to activate all the areas of my chest. Oh, wait a minute. You said that's impossible.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And like I said, there's a science and an art. I think you're talking about the art, and it's there.
Yeah. Dr. George Tuliatos, who has a fantastic physique himself, says squeeze and stretches are necessary, but it's better between sets or post-workout. He's asking the question. So if you look at this from the standpoint of some of the things that Dante Trudell has promoted in the dog crap training method, he feels that stretches under a load after you're done your training session, if you're hitting chest, then you go and you get a couple heavy dumbbells and you just let them tear your chest apart. Just let them sink. That actually is a great way to use stretching movements that build muscle. And there is science behind it, because there's evidence that type of loaded stretch increases androgen receptor biosynthesis. So the more androgen receptors you have in the muscle, the greater strength, the bigger the muscle gets. So there is some evidence about that. Let's go to the next. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go. You have something to say.
I was going to say that when I wrote the original blueprint, I had an entire section on loaded stretching and its importance. And basically what you just said, it triggers growth.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The next question comes from Mike Pissarro. He says, I'm just going to be honest and say I'm on the gas. I guess he means juice. I blast and cruise year round, so don't take much of a break. Should I be taking any regular supplements, or are they just a waste of time?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'll tell you why. People that use drugs quickly become of the opinion that supplements are a waste of time. And let's be honest, you get on the gas, it's a lot more powerful in most cases than creatine, glutamine, and whatever other amine you want to throw in there. However,
Ediamine.
Nice fella. However, the exact opposite is true, and I'll give you a few examples. Number one, we know testosterone is something that belongs in the body, and therefore, unless it's taken at crazy high dosages, it's I'll just come out and say it, it's relatively safe. However, when people start using things like Dianabol, Anadrol 50, methyl 1 test, these steroids are not recognized by the body, and in large part because of their chemical makeup, they survive first pass liver metabolism, but at a cost, right? Your liver enzymes are going to go up, your alkaline phosphatase and bilirubin and things like AST and ALT, but those are frequently elevated in people that lift weights anyway. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is you can help your liver by taking various over-the-counter supplements such as N-acetylcysteine, certainly TUDCA, I think would be on the top of that list, even something like the R isomer of alpha lipoic acid to help your liver function. I've also spoken to people that get tremendous pumps in the gym from usually some of the stronger ones like Tren, to the point where it becomes very difficult for them to move. You know, even a lower back pump by going through your workout and moving the weights from point A to point B and back again results in a tremendous pump. In that instance, I have heard from them loud and clear that 2 to 4 grams of taurine a day, and magnesium, certainly bioavailable forms of magnesium like magnesium citrate or aspirate, work wonders in preventing those cramps. There are several other nutrients, supplements, whatever you want to call them, that you can use to protect yourself. But there are also supplements to protect your brain against some of the deleterious effects of, androgen usage. Now, having said that, the heart and lungs are really the big worry in anyone who's a long-term steroid user. And I think he said, look, he stays on all the time, blast and cruise. When that is the case, cardioprotective nutrients like, believe it or not, Tribulus terrestris can be of benefit, and that's because of the furostenolic saponins contained therein. You will also find, if you go to Amazon, there's a product called Barlow's Fenugreek. It is standardized for 70% furostenolic acids, furostenolic saponins rather. And what these molecules do is they dilate arteries, which over time, right, can accumulate plaque, and it's not a good thing when methyl 1 test puts your HDL good cholesterol, which should be over 40, into the single digits. You need to give yourself a helping hand. Along those lines, I have always maintained and seen in my own blood work that ephedrine boosts your HDLs. Now, it's a double-edged sword in the steroid user because we know some of the more powerful drugs lead to weight gain and fluid retention, which of course ups your blood pressure. To put ephedrine caffeine on top of that can really be tempting fate. However, in the man who is controlling his blood pressure, ephedrine can only help his HDL levels. And sure, you might only get to 25, but answer this question: who would you rather be, the guy at 2 or the guy at 25? So long story short, over-the-counter nutritional supplements are valuable for the person taking drugs. And I would go so far as to say they are more valuable to that person because of the performance-enhancing drugs they're taking.
So the one important mineral that people should be using if they're on androgens is copper. A lot of people who are on high doses of androgens, and Dr. Tuliatos probably can chime in on this in written form, they end up having something called cardiomyopathy. It could be because of hemodynamics. It also could be from changes in the actual muscle tissue of the heart. But there was a great study done. Actually, it was two separate studies. They duplicated the results. It was done on rodents where they did an aortic clamp to create back pressure into the heart. And they created the phenomenon of cardiomyopathy, which is a weakening of the chamber of the heart, and it starts to blow out like a bubble on a tire tube.
Wow.
And then and it leads to heart failure. And so what happens is one group, they did the aortic clamp and they supplemented with a placebo, and the other group, they did an aortic clamp and they supplemented with the equivalent of 1 milligram a day of copper in human terms.
Yep.
And the rodents that were getting the copper didn't develop cardiomyopathy. Now, they did another study, interestingly enough, with copper, and this was after the group both had developed cardiomyopathy from the aortic clamp, and one group they supplemented post. So they already had cardiomyopathy. One group they gave copper to, one group they gave the placebo to. They sacrificed them, and they saw that the fibrotic tissue had disappeared in the group that was getting copper, and in the group that was getting a placebo, their cardiomyopathy stayed. So that led me to start to think about bodybuilders, weightlifters, power lifters who are on high doses of androgens. You got to make sure you're getting enough copper in your diet, and it could be coming from red meat that you're eating, but it's very easy to supplement with 1 milligram of copper. And if you're going to take copper, you should then supplement with zinc. So just take the minimum daily requirement of zinc and copper, and that way you are going to do something to protect the architecture, the structural architecture of the heart. And that's a supplement that I think anybody who's using androgens could benefit from. That's my opinion.
That's a great point, and I would be remiss not to mention vitamin K2 and TMG, trimethylglycine. Trimethylglycine will bring homocysteine down, which can happen to individuals eating excess protein. And K2 is 100 micrograms a day, will help prevent calcification of the arteries. It is not the same vitamin K, K1, that you get eating vegetables. You need K2, 4, 6. K2 is what's sold, almost predominantly. And I like, in that category, I like Now Foods product. So very simply, vitamin K2.
So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a quick commercial break. Those of you who are watching this video on YouTube, stay with us. There is no break. We're just going to go in and out of the music for you. We'll be right back with more of the BluePrint Power Hour. Welcome back. So let's give some shout outs real quick to people who are listening live. Of course, Dr. George Tuliatos, all the way from Athens, Greece. Diego Paparella, Stel Yo, Johnny Neptune, Brian Heron, and there's more. I can't see them all. I have to learn how to use this console a little bit better. And if I missed you, I apologize. Just post something. Just say shout out, and I'll make sure to mention your name. So Diego Paparella says liver has a good amount of copper. He's right. Liver has a good amount of copper, hemi-iron, B12. Liver is magic. Those of you who have missed some of my earlier comments about liverwurst, I get it at Kroger's. I get it cut really thick, and I call it meat cookies. And I love to eat those very often. Stel Yo said, you just reminded him about his Amazon K2 order. He
good
put
man.
That in. Yeah, good man, good man. And he also said, now has a 250 cap, 17,900 micrograms. Is that enough? A good dose? Yeah, 100 micrograms actually is a good dose of K2. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good man.
Oh, wait. And George Tuliato says, Patrick Arnold used to say, don't let your cysteine turn into homo. This is not I'm not taking responsibility for that comment, but since it's out there, I was just going to do it. Listen, there's one other thing you can do to completely obliterate homocysteine, and that's take creatine. Homocysteine is produced in the process where the body produces creatine. Your body makes its own creatine. And if you supplement with creatine, your homocysteine levels will drop to 0, whether you take B12 or methylfolate or any of the other things that help with the reduction of homocysteine. Creatine is magic for people who want to get rid of homocysteine levels. Diego Paparella says taurine has a huge cardioprotective properties.
Right.
In fact, it's been shown to actually improve endurance. Great stuff. Albert Woody is listening and watching live. Albert is a big fan of the show, sends me lots of good information and messages. Thanks for being here, Albert. And of course, my buddy Stelio again there. And he's in New York. He's a fellow New Yorker. He's a gentleman. He's a good guy. All right, so the next question actually comes from Mike Grady. He says, I gave German loading pattern number 1 and your Synthogen a try like you asked. There's no doubt in my mind I experienced greater gains than I ever have, like adding 25 pounds to my max deadlift, and I felt like I could train every day. Synthogen is out of stock at Predator Nutrition. I'm not clear where to go after GLP-1. Can you help me out? You know, I want to mention something. Coach Rob Regish is very underestimated as a source of not just great information, but a great supplement. And he's not launching a new SKU every month, right? He focuses on 2 supplements that work. And if you use them, they work. And German loading pattern number 1 works. It's been around forever. And so the idea that this guy added 25 pounds to his already max deadlift, he's been training for a long time. That's not placebo, folks. He didn't imagine he added 25 pounds to his deadlift. He added 25 pounds to his already max deadlift. So, you know, give Coach Rob the respect he deserves. He may not be as popular as some of these other gurus out there because he doesn't have a full social media staff working for him. But if you really want to make gains, pay attention. Go to CoachRobRegish.com today. I promise you, you'll pick up little tidbits and you'll be stronger by the end of the week. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah. So in the process of answering that question, just a quick shout out to Panos Antonakos over in Greece. Since we're talking, great man. So we get to the Synthogen situation, specifically at Predator. It is out of stock. It has been out of stock for some time. I know Predator is trying to work with MASS, Muscle and Sports Science, down there at bodybuildingsupplements.com to get their order put in. But suffice it to say, it'll probably be a while. So if you're waiting for your Synthogen, the best place to get it, really the only place to get it, is to go direct to John Drake down at bodybuildingsupplements.com. Now, we spoke of German loading pattern 1. It's been around a long time. In this case, it added a whopping 25 pounds to Mike's deadlift. And here's the, you know, that in and of itself is impressive enough. Here's the really impressive part. It can do that for you in 6 workouts. Now, when I was a bit younger, it was 2012, I was using Synthogen. I was able to burn through German loading pattern 1 in 14 days. So in less than 2 weeks, I too added 20 pounds on my squat. It is a lot of weight to add in a very short period of time. So I would tell you, on the inside, if you're using Synthogen, you can get through that loading pattern in 2 weeks. Otherwise, the safe bet is to train twice a week, which means at the end of 3 weeks, you will peak with your additional poundage. Now, the question about where to go from here is a very good one, because a lot of people will peak at, let's say, a 500-pound deadlift. Now the question becomes, now what? What are you going to do? If you do what most people do, you switch to some random program or you just train without setting a new goal, you're going to lose those 25 pounds on your deadlift. What you want to do is to take 1 week off to give your central nervous system and muscles a break, because these programs are very intense. and then continue on with a new loading pattern. In the case that I've put together a half a dozen of them, that would be German loading pattern 2, which brings you to a new peak. It'll add another 5 to 10%. In the next case is you're using the Russian strength program generator, and then the 10% solution, and on and on and on. The curious effect that those loading patterns have is this: they will boost not only the lift that you are specifically using them for, but every other exercise that you perform throughout your workout. There's a cascading effect. So in other words, you're gonna get the rub when you go to perform leverage squats after your heavy deadlifts, your one-arm dumbbell rows, your flat or your weighted dips. I have seen it over and over and over. The central nervous system gets primed, and then the next 3 to 5 exercises you have in your workout, they're so much stronger, which has big implications. So that's what to do. You don't want to lose that. You want to continue to train smart.
So, George Tuliatos, I didn't know this. He said that he's been reading your articles at anabolic.org. I didn't know you write for anabolic.org.
Yeah, I wrote several articles for them. It's been a while, but I thought it was an interesting website, and I said, hey, I've got something to contribute. So they very generously published my articles there.
We have to give a shout out to Jason Bell is watching live. I guess German volume training is what Dr. Tuliatos is talking about. Exhausted me in a month. Joints achy. Now, German volume training is different than German loading pattern number
Correct.
1, right?
Yeah, it's German volume training, entirely different. The classic German volume training is 10 sets of 10, which is a tremendous load on your system. Yes, you're also going to pay a price in terms of cortisol at the end of that workout. So I'm not surprised, Doctor, when you say it exhausted you. It also exhausted me. It just was not a good fit for what I was looking for.
Peter Rouse is watching live.
Hey,
I haven't had a chance to chat with him in a long time. I see him once in a while. He's a daddy now. He's spending
really?
a lot less, he's spending a lot less time with social media and doing more, I'm sure, at home as a dad. Good to see you, Peter. Nice to see you.
Congratulations too.
Yeah. So interestingly, I have been training my upper body frequently. I've been doing an on-off, one day on, one day off, and where I'm just doing push-pull.
Yep.
And so in doing that, I'm actually hitting, in the course of 6 days, I'm hitting body parts over again, and I am growing. But the one thing that I am doing is I'm following Coach Wade's undulating training approach, where I'll come in, and when I feel really good, I'll go as heavy as I can, and I'll shoot for 12 or less reps in a given movement. And then the next time I hit my back, let's say, I'll shoot for 12 to 15 or 12 to even 18 reps. I'll lighten up the weight.
Right.
And then I may even come and do speed work the third time I hit it, where I just go 50% of my max weight, and I'm really not working hard. It's more of like active recovery. Yep. And then I come back again and I go heavy again. And for the first time ever, let's see. So it was yesterday I trained. I'm off today. So yesterday I trained back, and I opened up with the Nautilus pullover machine. And I do the Nautilus pullover machine without holding on to the handles. I just use my elbows against the pads. That's all I do. And I did the whole stack, 240 pounds for 5 reps.
Wow.
And that was my last set. I graduated up to 240 pounds. And I've never done 240 pounds before on the Nautilus machine. And I only did it for 5 reps because I'm not looking to push myself or hurt myself, but I felt strong enough to do it. And I have a funny feeling that we can hit a lot of body parts much more frequently if we follow some sort of a pattern where we peak and then we kind of come down, and then we peak, and then we come down. I think that people could hit their body parts 2 or 3 times a week. What do you think about that?
I think that's a very pertinent observation. And, I've heard about that before. It's sometimes referred to as, following your biorhythms. That was a popular program years ago. But listen, if you roll into the gym and you are burnt, if you are on your way to the gym and you're dreading the workout, or at least, the fact that it's the same old thing, you need to shake it up. Now, you also can't train heavy every time. Everyone's trying to add more weight to the bar because this is progressive resistance training. However, when you're not feeling at your strongest, it is a great idea, fantastic idea, to work on speed. Why? The force equals mass times acceleration. Everyone's trying to add more mass to the bar. In the course of doing so, the bar gets slower. Nobody is working on acceleration. So if you can work on both and follow those biorhythms, you're going to be a stronger athlete for it at the end of the day.
So I want to comment. So Dr. Tuliatos, I don't know who DY is. Do you know who DY is in the bodybuilding or fitness community?
No, I'm trying to think. I know Vince Gironda championed 10 by 10, and then
Right.
Mr. Charles Poliquin also wrote about it and advocated it in his book. I'm missing DY though.
What George said is DY said that the Nautilus lat machine. I don't know if that's the pullover. Perfectly isolates the latimus dorsi. Yep. Arms aren't involved, and there's 180 degree. Well, the Nautilus pullover machine, definitely Dorian Yates. Okay, thank you. DY is Dorian Yates. So the Nautilus pullover machine has a handle that goes across the front of it.
Right.
Right. You put your elbows in the pad, and then you hold on to these cambered handles, and so many guys are super strong at that because their arms are working too, right? They're brachials, they're using their arms to help pull it down. When you let go of that, and I actually keep my hands together like this, and then I have to break them apart as my elbows go past my body. If you don't hold on, you'll find out how weak you really are in the Nautilus pullover machine very, very quickly. Very quickly.
And I guess consider yourself fortunate that you actually have a Nautilus version of that. But
right.
here's the important thing about a good machine pullover. Unlike every other back movement that you can perform, it takes the biceps out of the movement. And every other lift you do, seated cable rows, pull downs, chin ups, one-arm dumbbell rows, the bicep is the limiting factor. It is much smaller than the back. It will fatigue and give out before the back. Not so with the Nautilus pullover. And to your point, Carl, using your elbows instead of your hands completely eliminates any bicep bicep involvement.
Activation, right?
Right. And as a consequence, the back is can be trained flat out.
There is a video of me doing these on the superhumanradio.net blog. Where I say this is my way of doing the Nautilus pullovers, and I challenge anybody out there who's using Nautilus pullover right now and holding on to that cross member while they're doing them to lighten up dramatically and get the form down and start doing them elbows only, because your back will become so much thicker. Your rhomboids will become so much prouder. Your back development will zoom into high speed if you start doing this. Then you're going to have to go lighter. You don't be embarrassed. Like if you're doing 200-pound pullovers and you're using your arms and your hands too, let go and use your elbows. You may have to cut your weight in half. You really may. I kid you not. And Dorian Yates grabbed it reversely. So there is a machine in my gym that is a pullover machine, but it's not a Nautilus.
Right.
And I do those, George. It has handles. It doesn't have pads. And I grab the handles underhanded and pull this way. But I still think the Nautilus pullover machine is the king of upper body exercises, quite frankly, because it builds your shoulders. It builds abs. If you're doing it right and you're getting a full extension at the top, you
Right.
feel your abs having to hold your spine from overextending. I mean, it's a great machine.
For those seeking more information on that, Arthur Jones, the creator of Nautilus, wrote an excellent column in the July 1970 issue of Iron Man. I believe that is still online. The title of that article, The Pullover, the Upper Body Squat. And he makes an excellent case that it is the upper body squat of upper body movements.
So this is a good question. So George says, which is better, more effective, pullover more effective, the Nautilus or dumbbell? It's got to be the Nautilus, because the dumbbell is using gravity. And so there are points where the dumbbell gets to where it's very, very light. With the Nautilus, you have extreme resistance all the way through the movement. What do you think, Rob?
In this case, one of the few cases, you're absolutely right. The machine is better than the free weight version. And I would also caution people, do not get carried away with the amount of weight you use on the free weight version of this, because the one injury I do have, severe arthritis in my right elbow, I'm bone on bone. That is 100% my fault, because I got carried away with the weight on pullovers. I actually moved to using a easy curl bar instead of a dumbbell so I could add more weight, and the weight dropped too fast. I tried reversing it too fast, and over the course of the next 10 years or so, it has wasted away to nothing. I have no cartilage in my right elbow.
So the only way that you could do a dumbbell pullover and have the same effect as using a Nautilus pullover machine is if you hung upside down. If you were completely inverted, your head was pointing down, your feet were pointing up, and you were pulling the weight from the ground up and into your chest. And even then, when the weight becomes parallel to the ground, you don't have the same resistance on the lats any longer. You don't. So really, this is a situation where I really believe that the machine outpaces the free weight. Now, Peter Rouse has a comment to make. Let me just get back up to it here. He says, the dumbbell allows greater range of motion. However, most people don't use full range of motion on dumbbell pullovers. But I still would say to you, Peter, with all respect, that there becomes a point in time where gravity, which is pushing down, and the arc of the movement is no longer taking advantage of gravity. And that is why I think the pullover machine is better. Now, the problem with the pullover machine is most people don't get the camber, the pivot of the machine in the right place for their shoulders, and they do hurt themselves. In fact, somebody who will never ever use the Nautilus pullover ever again because he hurt himself is Brooks Kubik. He says that the Nautilus pullover machine is the worst machine that anyone ever invented, but that's because he had a bad experience with it. He hurt his shoulders with it. That's my point. Getting used to where you should be. You have to start out with very, very light weight. You have to. Stel Yo says, my gym doesn't have a Nautilus. Back when I went to Powerhouse, I used to love getting the stretch in the upper abs. I know, right? I do pullovers using a hex bar, grabbing the bar on the long ends. Great stretch on the lats, but definitely plenty of bicep tension. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's the first time I ever heard of using a, what did he say, trap bar?
Yeah, no. He said, well, I got to go back here. Stretch up. Using a hex bar.
Hex bar. Okay. So
yeah.
I mean,
so because then you could be neutral grip with it if you're using a hex bar.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that is a fantastic idea. I'm gonna steal that and try it in the gym today.
So Peter says you can do with dumbbell pullovers, but do them on a Swiss ball and move your body to maintain tension through the movement. Great point. Great point.
I have also modified the strength curve with dumbbell pullovers by attaching a band. So, you know, the further you pull over that dumbbell, the more tension that there is. And so it's kind of a reversal of what it normally is. But again, bands are very hard on the body. I don't know that combining bands with weight is the best thing to do on that movement.
Dude, Stelio, you were right. He's talking about using the trap bar to do a pullover.
Yeah.
Holy, I mean, that's like doing a pullover with the chassis of an automobile.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great. That's great. That's great thinking, Stel. And like I said, I'm going to steal it if it's okay. Full credit to you, though.
Peter wants to give credit where credit is due. Jerry Telly developed the method that he was just mentioning, I guess, with the Swiss roll.
Yeah.
And that's nice. You don't see that. You don't see that much. You don't see people saying, well, this is where I learned it. Everybody wants to make it sound like they invented it. Very, very nice. Very nice. Yeah. And last thing here before we go to break, vertically or perpendicular lying on the bench. Well, you'd have to be lying vertically. You'd have to be laying parallel to the ground, right?
I have always performed it lying on the bench.
Yeah.
So now, can you get a deeper stretch lying across the bench? Probably so. Is it better necessarily? I don't know that one's better than the other. I would say as long as you can perform one of those safely, then you're good to go. But like I said, and I'm in full agreement with you, if you don't have a machine, petition for one. The pullover, that machine is that good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got a very important discussion that Rob will have as part of the Blueprint Tip of the Day. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We got some great people watching live today.
Yeah.
So yeah, Patrick Rogers is watching live right now, and recently he was at Arnold Schwarzenegger's house smoking a cigar with him. I saw it on Facebook. I don't know what the whole details were, but he and his wife Corrine were there, and also my buddy Dwight Witten is listening live. I'm happy about that too, because Dwight keeps telling people I'm his personal trainer, and I keep telling him don't say that to people, man. But anyway. So here's Stelio once again. I love people who don't take credit for other people's stuff, right? He said he read about using the trap bar for a pullover in T Nation, in an article in T Nation, and he explains here it's not what either of us thought, actually. If I can get this this comment to appear. So you use the outside portion of the bar. The pullover can be done using a standard grip or using the outside frame for handles. So you know how it's a hexagon.
Right.
So you're using, and so think about that big contraption hanging beneath it.
Wow.
You can use plates on it too, obviously.
Right.
But he says that you really do have to go light because it's a very challenging movement, especially if you have shoulder problems or impingements. Thanks a lot for offering all that great information, Stelio. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Wait, we were just joined by somebody else. James Holston is watching live. How you doing, James? Thanks for being here. So what is the Blueprint tip of the day, Coach?
The tip of the day is not going to be an easy one to talk about, but we need to talk about it because it's profoundly affecting people's lives. I'm talking about depression. The passing of Dr. Chrysler and the show that you did to pay homage to him, as you say, was one of the best shows I think I've ever heard. And I've heard you do several of them for people that have passed, and they've likewise been excellent. But it obviously is a very sad situation. For those that don't know, Dr. Chrysler took his own life. He hung himself. And it's truly tragic because I've had my own struggles with depression, and there have been, unfortunately, suicides in my family. So I'm going to talk about some pretty personal things today. But if it helps just one of you, it will be worth it. So here goes. From a very early age, I sensed that there was something different about me. I could never put my finger on it, but it was there. And what I'm talking about is I was extremely introverted. I was not a very demonstrative or jovial child, and I saw that in all of the family pictures. You know, my family comes from places like Poland and Czechoslovakia, and the pictures spoke 1,000 words. There were no smiles, just a very stoic, serious look. And that's because, in large part, your whole life was you go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, you get up the next day, you go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, and you do that until you drop. So I don't know what it is. I did not know what it was that was in my DNA, quite literally, that made me the way that I was. But my life was lived, and unfortunately sometimes still goes this way. I lived at 2 speeds, idle and full throttle. And while it's true there was a genetic component in there lurking, life experiences are also responsible for shaping who you are. And I'll give you just one example. So I took the SATs, obviously, I think in my junior year of high school. And I will never forget this as long as I live. My father came home from work. I was laying on the couch. And as he reached up and undid his tie, he asked me, "What'd you get on the SATs?" I said 720. He then uttered these destructive, damaging words. "You might as well enlist in the Army, son. Nobody's gonna want you." So that sent me into a very deep state of depression. However, the depression never lasted too long because it gave rise to a manic phase where I was going to move heaven and earth to show that person that challenged me, in this case my father, that they were wrong. So when they dropped me off at college, they left me with this advice: "You're probably going to flunk out. This will be the most difficult thing you'll ever do, but give it a shot and we'll see how it goes." For 4 years, I never gave my parents my grades. I never showed them a report card. This is back in the day when they weren't online. The only thing they knew was that miraculously, 4 years later, I was still in college. So when I finally graduated, I took my final grades and I drove out to my parents' house. And I asked my father to step out into the driveway. I then stuck that report card under his nose, which showed a final cumulative GPA of 3.6 out of 4.0, and said, "What do you think of that, boss?" He still could not utter the words that I needed to hear. "I'm proud of you, son." So that sent me into another Great Depression. And it was never diagnosed until age 40, 41, when my world collapsed. Job loss, divorce, rhabdo hospitalizations, divorces and my other divorces in my family. And I was living with my cousin and his father during part of that divorce. And one Saturday morning, I woke up and saw 2 police officers at the kitchen table. They were there to tell his father that his son David had hung himself. And he further told his father that his truck was at the park where he hung himself if he wanted to go get it. He asked me to go with him. What the police officer failed to tell his father was that they had not yet removed David's body. So when we got there, they were still removing it. And you can just imagine what the scene was with his father. I have had the experience then of suicide in my family. David was depressed, tremendously so. I never heard him say 2 words, and it was compounded with alcohol, okay? But when we got home with this truck, I walked into the kitchen, and surrounded the table were his mother, his father, his grandmother, his brothers and sisters, and his children. And for anyone thinking that the pain ends when you commit suicide, let me assure you, it's only beginning. The people at that table, including me, were obviously hurt, angry, and traumatized by what was going on. And to this day, the things that were said around that table about whose fault it was have torn a family apart. So what I'm telling you is that depression is real. It's something that even if you suspect that you have it, I would highly encourage you to go and get it checked out, because it wasn't diagnosed in me until age 40, 41, when life experiences really brought it out. One final note. I have never been suicidal in my life, except when they put me on Lexapro. Within days of taking Lexapro, every problem I had was magnified to the nth degree. And I sent a text to my dad that he could come tomorrow to get me, but I wasn't waking up. I can only imagine what that did to my father, who was 70 years old at the time. Long story short, if you're depressed, I want you to get help. It is not a sign of weakness to reach out and get help, to hang on for one more day. Because as I've said to you in past episodes, I am doing better now than I ever have. I have a wonderful wife and a wonderful life, but I just couldn't see that when I thought about ending it. So if you're depressed, I want you to make, or suicidal, I want you to make a phone call to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. They're at 1-800-273-8255. If you would just hang on for one more day and not do to your family what happened in mine, it will make all the difference if this saves just one person. Your problems are not as bad as they seem. You know, they're magnified when you're depressed. And, you know, Tim, I see your note there, and I want you to call that line. You say you don't have anyone in your life? Listen, boss, you do. My phone number is 860-753-0373. If you need to talk, feel free to call me.
You know, the funny thing is that we're more connected than ever, right? Like right now, look at this.
Right.
I mean, we have people from all over the globe watching us, listening to us, interacting with us, but people have never felt more alone. Suicide rates are up. I just talked about this yesterday when I was in the sauna after my training. Suicide rates are going through the roof. People are killing themselves left and right today. I know for sure that social media has a benefit, because Tim Ohms can actually make that comment here and reach people, right? But the reality is that social media also is contributing to this level of disconnect.
Yeah.
And it's really very, very sad. I think it's very important what you said, that you never felt suicidal until you started taking an SSRI. SSRIs are not the answer for depression. They're not. They absolutely are not. In fact, people don't become mass murderers or commit suicide generally until they're on an SSRI.
Right.
And so don't go to the doctor. Find people who have an interest in your well-being and tell them about how depressed you are. But then it's up to you to start to take some steps. What is it that you feel like you are lacking in your life? In your case, it was recognition. It was recognition. Your dad didn't want to give you the recognition of your achievements, and you invested so much meaning into him recognizing your achievements that by not getting them, that made you sad. So, and that's why if you are one of those people who feels that you are not getting what you need from the people in your life currently, find other people. We have, this, how many billions of people on this planet? You can spit and hit 50 people you don't know right now.
Yeah,
reach out.
Yeah, Tim also made a comment, I don't have anybody in my life right now. The key word.
But what does that really mean? What does that really mean? Does he want someone to love? Does he want a companion? Or does he want a buddy to train with? Because that's a very broad statement.
I'm going to assume it's a significant other. But let me tell you this, Tim. The key words in that phrase, I don't have anybody in my life right now, are the words right now. Okay? There's an entire world of women out there that I'm sure, or other people out there that I'm sure, would be excited to meet you and talk to you. And I tell you that because when I was at my lowest point, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And when I say 1 bedroom, there was a bed and 3 feet on this side and 3 feet on that side. Okay, that was it.
In California, that's called a luxury studio apartment.
But, other than my son, I too had nobody in my life. And I kept thinking to myself, my God, who's going to want me? I was that low. It's like, who would want to sign on to this? But I will tell you this. God sent the person to me that I needed. And Carl, you told me this when I was going through my divorce, and I didn't believe it at the time. But you said, on the other end of this thing is a special person waiting for you that's going to be perfect for you, and it's going to make your life fantastic. And you were absolutely 100% right. She was a local girl, 2 towns away. We met on an online dating site, but at the precise time she reached out and said, why don't we go out tonight? And I said, no, it's kind of cold out, I don't want to go. And she said, we live 2 towns away, you have no excuse not to meet me. And so I tell you, man, I'm sure glad I went out that night, because I married that woman, and she makes me the happiest man on earth.
And that's what, look, George Tuliato says, I struggled with depression since I was in high school. Training was a window to relieve stress and negative feelings. And this is very, very accurate. Training raises the hormones that make you feel good. So the first step is to start training. And Tim, I know you probably do train, but there's something else. There's a little nuance here in some of the things that Coach Rob has been saying. And that is, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And when you think about it, you're looking at the things in your life right now as this is the best it's going to get. How do you know that?
Yeah.
How do you know this is the best your life is going to get? How do you know that the people that are in your life right now who are not supporting you aren't going to be replaced by people who will? There's at least a 50-50 chance that you're wrong. At least 50-50. And that's way too big of a chance to go, I'm going to end it all. Look, there isn't a person on this planet who hasn't been in a bind, in a situation where they thought to themselves, the easiest thing for me to do would be to take my own life. Right? There's men commit suicide more often than women. And that's because men bear a lot of responsibility, financial responsibility. They're viewed as their value is based on what they earn. And a lot of guys don't feel like they're worth anything because they feel like they're not earning anything. First thing, you got to eliminate that. That's BS.
Right.
Okay? Where you are in your life right now is no representation of where you're going to be in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years. And at least 50-50, I'm right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it was 100%, I'd say, oh, yeah, I would have killed myself too in certain instances of my life. But I always believed that, you know what, something good could happen tomorrow.
Yeah. You know, so if you're standing right now at the edge of the abyss, I would tell you, nobody knows how this movie ends. Only the man upstairs. You need to just keep hanging on to get to the end of the movie, because between now and then, trust me, some wonderful things are going to happen. You might not see it. You might not see it right away, but on God's time, wonderful things are going to happen.
There's an actress that was telling a story recently on a TV show, and she mentioned that her mom actually was in the stirrups and was going to get an abortion.
Yeah.
I mean, look, life is dynamic. It sucks now, and it may suck again 10 years from now, but in between there's going to be good things. So you just have to hold on. You have to hold on because it will be good. Peter Rouse says online contacts don't give you the oxytocin release. People need real human contact. This is true. So I did a show 7-8 years ago that showed that people who hug 8 times a day are happier than people who don't, even if they have the same crappy life experiences.
Yeah.
When you hug another human being, your body releases oxytocin, as Peter is talking about. Oxytocin makes you feel like a complete human being. It gives you hope. It relaxes you. It dilates blood vessels. It does all sorts of good things, you know? So, and if you're saying to me right now, Tim, nobody loves me, nobody wants to be near me, that's not true. That's only true if you're standing where you're standing. Get out, move around. If the people aren't in your life that you want, then move out of where you are and go find them.
Yeah. And you know, that's exactly what I did. And like I said, God will put people in your path to to do wonderful things you can only dream about right now. Let me give you that telephone number one more time. It's 1-800-273-8255. These people, in addition to listening to you, there is real help and real hope, meaning they can put you in contact with local resources to help you alleviate the depression. And as someone who is now far removed from those days when I was suicidal, I can tell you that the terrible things that were going through my mind, a lot of them weren't real. And even the problems I did have, they're fixable. They're not going to last forever. You know, you need to understand, if that's going on in your brain, it's not real. It's not real.
Tim posted something, and I need clarification, Tim. The key word is lost to cancer. Did you lose someone to cancer, or are you battling cancer? Be clear on that one. Tony Picas, a buddy of mine from California, said, thank you for this topic. You know, there are a lot of people who are suffering in silence out there. You and I are people like that. There are a lot of people who are just suffering in silence out there. They don't have to. You know what? There's nothing to be ashamed about being depressed. It doesn't mean that your brain isn't working right. There are legitimate reasons to be depressed. Lose a job, lose a marriage, lose a child, lose a house. Someone breaks into your car and steals something you just can't afford to replace. That makes you sad. That's a legitimate feeling. And it's just as appropriate not to take drugs for that feeling as if you're in a funny movie and laughing really hard and somebody goes, oh my God, you're laughing so hard, you need a drug, you're laughing too hard. No, we need to understand that pain is growth provoking. Pain actually catapults you into new places in life. And depression is appropriate at different points in our lives. I'm waiting for Tim Ohms to finish the statement. The key word is loss to cancer. I want to understand what exactly that means. Let's see. He says, Stelio, thank you for sharing, Rob. Wow, this is a lot. I'm going to put this up there, and it's going to cover the screen. Strong man moves intense emotions, gasping. Yeah, this is a lot to read, and I want to read the whole thing. I'm going to leave it up there for everybody to read. I'm looking for Tim Ohms to finish his comment here. Remember, look at this. This is from George Tuliatos. Remember the case of Dr. Jack Kevorkian, Dr. Death, who was convicted 5 years in jail for helping euthanize terminally ill patients. Yeah. So, this is really an interesting discussion. We probably need to start doing a show just about depression. I got to tell you something. I didn't realize, when you're depressed, you just think it's you.
Right.
When you're dealing with depression, you think it's you. But meanwhile, you're coming into contact with 50% of the people in your life probably who feel the same way. And no one's talking about it. Everybody feels alone. It's really something.
Yeah.
Really
I want to thank all the listeners for their kind comments. It's not an easy topic to talk about, but I want people to know it doesn't make you a weak person to ask for help. It's a hard thing to do when you're a guy, right? We're all raised to be men and not show emotions, but you need to get it taken care of, and realize it's not really as bad as you think, man. It's just not real.
And here's the funny thing. A lot of us are sitting back and we're thinking to ourselves, so-and-so's got a great life. He's got a great, beautiful girlfriend. He makes a bunch of money. I don't have any of that sort of stuff. Well, let me tell you something. We lost Dr. John Chrysler to suicide last week. He had a thriving practice. He had a beautiful fiance. He was well respected for the things that he had done in male hormone replacement therapy. He was just invited to go speak on a speaking tour with Dr. Mark Gordon to talk about testosterone's effects on traumatic brain injury. Here is a guy who, by all accounts, when you look at his life from outside, you go, man, this guy's got it all. He had a beautiful car. He lived in a beautiful home in Michigan. He was loved. He was funny. He was gregarious. He was handsome. He had a beautiful fiance. He had a thriving business. He had opportunities coming to him. And yet they find him hanging in his garage. I'm telling you, we have people out there who are so depressed and they're just not understanding that it's like AA. You got to hang on for one more day. Yeah. Just hang on for one more day, because everything perspective-wise can change on a dime.
Yep.
On a dime. But it takes work. You've got to be honest, and you've got to search your soul and say, what is it that I am lacking in my life that makes me feel like I don't have the strength to go on any longer? That takes work. You have to be honest with yourself. And it could be something that in your mind you think, oh, I'm being so petty, like my father didn't like me, my mother didn't treat me nice. No. There are no petty reasons. If that's the core, if that's the crystal, if that's the piece of sand in the oyster that's creating the pearl, you have to own up to it. You have to address it. And then sometimes when you address it, you think, gee, how silly I am. Let me move past this, and you can get out of your depression. Now, there are forms of depression that do have to be addressed because of inflammation, because of metabolic disorders, and exercise, lack of activity and exercise, lack of sunlight. But those are things you can fix too. those are all easier to fix than the destruction that you will leave by killing yourself in all the people who do love you but aren't coming out and telling you on a day in and day out basis that you will hurt them. And some people say suicide is a passive aggressive move to hurt other people. I don't believe that anymore. I used to, but I don't think so anymore. I think people run out of energy to move forward. They just see like it's not going to change. It's like being stuck in a bear trap and keeping yourself alive every day just to suffer the pain of the bear trap. Who wants to do that? Who wants to do that?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. A lot of people feel that they've run the race and there's nothing left. There's nothing left to give. And I will tell you now, after having gone through the experience, after having a suicide in my family, and other things that I can't talk about, you need to hang in for one more day. My life, I thought my life was over. I thought because of the divorce, I ruined my son's life. None of that is true. You need to hang in for one more day. None of us knows how this movie ends. You need to hang in for the ending.
And Annie Friedman Pearson just posted exactly what is speaking to what I said a second ago. Yeah. There are things that may have happened to you a long time ago, and you just keep them bottled up inside you.
Yeah.
And it's time to get those things out. Say them, get it over with. You know what? It's like Eminem at the end of the movie 8 Mile, where he's got to rap with this guy. He's got to compete with this guy. And he knows this guy's going to talk about the fact that Eminem is trailer trash, his mother's a drug addict, and all these things. So what does he do? He comes out and he says them. He says, I'm trailer trash. My mother sleeps around. My mother's a drug addict. And then he looks at the guy and says, like, what could you, he doesn't say the words, but he looks at him and he drops the mic like, now what could you possibly say that's going to offend me after I just said everything that you could possibly say? You disarm the situation when you speak about it, when you address it, when you feel it, you disarm it. And that's why it's important to address it. What is CSA? What is CSA? Annie, what is CSA? I don't know what that is. She put CSA up, and I'm not sure what that acronym is. But we're going to have to end the show pretty soon.
She made a great point about depression in men is usually the result of things unspoken. I know what it's like to keep things bottled in. I did it for 40 years. It was only after I lost everything I was able to actually talk about it. And, to some extent, I'll be dealing with it the rest of my life. And that's okay, because I know now, and this is the bottom line, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And given everything that happened to me, they couldn't hold me down for the count, brother. And Tim, if you're listening, I need you to look at it like that. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, because it will. Because it will.
Annie said CSA stands for childhood sexual abuse. And the reality is that a lot of men have suffered childhood sexual abuse. They keep it bottled up inside them because they're afraid that if they say something that they will be seen as less than men. Right. And it eats away at their soul over time. I know what she's talking about. This is true. And I have stories that I could talk about. I don't want to get into it during this show, but it's very, very true. A lot of men carry the scar of that, and it eats away at them. And the older and older they get, it becomes worse and worse.
Yeah, and you know what? One other point I want to make. Forgiveness is a very powerful thing, because it wasn't until I forgave my father for what was left unsaid that I was able to move forward. So consider the power of forgiveness, consider people as they are, and know this: whatever issue you have with them, it's more about them and less about you. Forgiveness is a very powerful healing tool. Use it.
That's it for today, folks. I got news for you. I think we're going to start a new podcast.
Wow.
I think the world needs it. And I think we're going to just simply call it the Depression Show.
Wow.
And we're going to come on in the air and we're going to share stories and people, because I have a feeling that if people come on and share their pain, it will disarm and diffuse the pain. I really do.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
That's it for today. By the way, I'm doing Dave Palumbo's show today at 3:00, taping an interview with him on LL37. We're having amazing. I can't tell you the number of people who have messaged me and said they're going to give LL37 a try with their child on the spectrum, their autistic child. I'm going to have some very exciting stuff to report, I feel, in the next month or so. And nobody's talking about this but me here at Superhuman Radio. So, Coach Rob, thanks for all the hard work, brother.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll see everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow is tomorrow is Wednesday. I think we have a good show tomorrow. Hope so. We'll see you then.